Is Charles Van Morgan. Okay, this is the beginning of the James White Parkway. There's where the bridge, that's where the lanes come in. And I want to show you, showed you the other day where they have a concrete barrier in the way where if they ever need to make a lane of traffic, there's a concrete building. And they'd have to move that out of the way. They're sending us a message now. There's not only a concrete building, they're putting a metal barrier around that to make it doubly hard to ever make a road through here. I'll show you. So yeah, that's where a lane of traffic would be for the James White Parkway. Regardless of what you think about continuing the James White Parkway and not ending it right here, in the future it might need to be extended, and they're showing you that they're not going to ever extend that road. 100 years from now, that building will still be there unless we want to remove it, and it'd be very difficult to do that. They're putting barriers in the way. So let's see if we got any people on board. Come on in. I'm Charles Van Morgan. I am on the campaign trail. We've been knocking on doors all day today, doing a YouTube live video, and got several people that said they're going to vote for us. Several people said they're going to check into us. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about how people react to the campaign. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the state government and them open the door, the politics and the difference between those. And this is politics full force ahead. So get ready. We're going to talk about that. Let's see if we got anybody on board yet. Okay. Thank y'all very much. Okay, so we knock on doors, and a lot of people, most people are very nice, but some people are pretty rude, obnoxious, and they hold that vote over your head. You got to vote. Some people try to be, very few, but some people try to be rude and very destructive to try to make you think this is a hard thing to do, campaigning. And very, very rude, and try to cause you trouble. And they don't want you to campaign, so they try to show you how hard it can be and say mean stuff to you, which try to deter me from campaigning, from talking to voters, and try to hurt my feelings. And they do. It can be done. But the reaction that these rude horses platoons have is not what they're looking for, because they want to make me think that everybody's going to be that way. And when I knock on somebody's door and they take the opposing view in everything I say, I mean, and I'm listening to them, trying to do what they asked me to do, and they still don't even like that. They're not really taking opposing view of everything I say, because I'm taking their view. They're being horses platoons because they've already decided who they're going to vote for, regardless of the facts or truth, probably a particular party. And they wouldn't vote for me if I gave them $1 million. Made the world a lot better, made the world a better, and listen, this is more important, made the world better for their neighbors. There are hundreds, thousands of neighbors that want something done. They wouldn't care. They're voting for the party from Washington because they're indoctrinated. They're not very smart. So they try to be rude to me. I think, well, he won't knock on another door after he had to put up with that, and hold their vote over my head like, oh, this vote's powerful. This one vote I got here is powerful. And it is. It's one vote. But there's no way I'm going to get it. So I'm not worried about that. And the truth is, what I do about it, when you get across the road here, is I get motivated. I don't get deactivated. I get motivated. I go try to knock on hundreds more doors, talk to thousands more people, because instead of trying to demotivate me, it activates me, makes me more encouraged to knock on more doors, talk to more people. So the meaner you are, the more it does infuriate me in a good way. When I get infuriated, I do something positive about it. I go knock on hundreds more doors. So if I knock on your door and you think you're going to deter me because you're so rude to me, make me think every door is going to be that way, you're wrong. If I knock on 100 doors, legally, justifiably asking for votes, and people are rude to me and ask me to leave, I'll go knock on 100 more. It's not going to stop me. You know, we've been there, done that. I ran for governor, and, you know, we got a lot of votes. A lot of people were rude to me. And the governor fraudulently won. He lied to people. He's a liar. He's a self-proclaimed Christian liar. And do you see it stopping me? I mean, I tried another path, tried to get my law license. They won't give them to me. They keep those for their family and friends, and the pot of money they got from demanding high insurance policies off people so they can get rich. And it hasn't stopped me one bit. I'm still out here, still knocking on doors, still putting the word out. And we can win this election by friends calling friends, but if we should happen not to be able to get our foot in the door this time with the city council, I think we can, and we may not be able to, and we won't do it if you all don't help and knock on doors yourself or your neighbors and call your friends in South Knoxville and ask them to vote for me, then we won't. So I'm not disillusioned. I can't do this without your help, and you're going to be my boss, and I'll listen to you. And we won't win it without your help. So I'm not disillusioned. I'm going to be your servant. You're not mine. I understand that. And they got a lot of money, but we can win if you will help me contact people, and you'll get somebody that you can order around, because I'll listen to what Knoxvillians say. I won't take abuse, but you can tell me what to do and I'll listen and we'll get it done. But if you think that you're going to hold one vote over my head and deter me from campaigning by psychological tactics, that anything I say, even when I'm agreeing with you, that you disagree with me, to try to make me feel like a damn fool, well, you're wrong. Because I was in law enforcement. I'm sorry, I was. Actually, that's a joke. I protected more lives than anybody in the state did. But if you think, excuse me, I have a hearing aid. I have hearing aids, but take it out. But if you think that you are going to discourage me from getting the message out, that's what it's about, getting the message out. Part of getting the message out is being on a ballot, running for office, putting my feet where my mouth is. We're dead serious about this, and we're gonna try to win the election, and hopefully we can. So, car telling me to go, and then every time I take a step forward, they'd move forward. It's like, no, I'm not stepping in front of your truck. But if you think that you're going to deter me, it just makes it worse. And we're going to get the message out. And we're not going to be deterred. The message is, and here's the message. Write this down. Remember it when you go in the voting booth. That power to you, the people movement. My belief is that the government is not listening to us. And specifically right now, we're dealing with the local government. They're not listening to what we tell them to do. They're doing what they want to do. They're buying your votes, and then they don't care what you think. They don't listen to what you would have done after they bought your vote. They do what the people that gave them the money to buy your vote tells them to do. They buy your vote through all this money that they've got to buy ads, buy campaign signs, buy people to call on the phone, people to call you on the phone. They even buy the parties and put who they want in office. They could literally get somebody under the viaduct over there on Henley Street by the homeless shelter, and dress them up, put a suit on them, put lipstick on the pig, and they'd win public office because they got all this money, and prop them up, and then they're going to do what the people that bought the lipstick told them to do, which is to rule in favor of them. They're going to cut their own taxes, raise yours, like Mr. Has-Been did. He raised your taxes when he was in office. His friend, the governor, had a campaign fundraiser at his house. He really has been the governor, but he raised your taxes and ended his taxes. When he was in office, he called it a safety act. You know, they put those fancy words. A safety act means you have to pay him more money. That's what it meant. He raised your gas tax, and he doesn't care about a few cents on a gas tax. It doesn't affect him. He cared about his taxes, his mega tax, which is an inheritance tax, which he would have had to pay when he died, and his family would have got all his money. So he ended the inheritance tax. The inheritance tax is just for the super rich. It doesn't apply to the millions and millions of Tennesseans. It doesn't apply to thousands and thousands of Knoxvillians. The inheritance tax is only a tax that rich people have to pay when they have a certain amount of money, very high amount, and you don't have that much, trust me. And if you died, if your estate had that much money, that much cash and money, then you had to pay the government the taxes that went to them to help society, because no one's worth that much money. You got it by exploiting people. So he ended his inheritance tax and raised your tax. And that's what they do when they're in office. And they have plenty of money to buy elections. And that's what they're going to do. So we talked about, and it's very few people that are rude, but you know, you hold that boat over my head, makes me want to go out and knock on more doors. And I'm a fighter. I'm not going to stop until God tells me to stop. He didn't tell David not to throw the rock, and he hadn't told me not to stop. I answer to God. And we're going to fight like hell, and we're going to beat these people down. And even if we don't win the election, which we can if you'll help, we are going to beat the people in government office by getting the message out that you're not serving us. This is our government, and you get out. You get out of the way. We're going to get our way, and I will answer to people in Tennessee. So we talked about that. Next, we're going to talk about the legal system and politics, about evidence. We're going to talk about evidence. So let me see if anybody is on board. Okay. We're going to talk about evidence. And evidence is pertinent in a court hearing, and evidence is pertinent in politics. But there's a huge difference. And I paid for my education, but I thank God for my education, allowed me to get it. It's an education in legal education, which teaches me how to use evidence, influence. And I'm getting better at it every day, working on it. But I tried to get my law license. They won't give me my law license because they're crooked. They were committing crimes, saying I shouldn't have my law license while they were committing crimes. I've never been convicted of any crime ever in my life. And people that denied me were guilty of crimes of dishonesty, infamous crimes. So because they're dishonest people that hand out law licenses. The Tennessee Board of Law Examiners is a corrupt organization that benefits the rich at your expense. They don't want a lawyer like me that will defend you and use the Constitution. They want a lawyer that obeys the rich and powerful. So they denied me my law license. But that's fine. You can keep me out of a courtroom. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I still have my legal education. Now, in a courtroom, you have rules of evidence. In politics, you're not limited by those rules of evidence. You're limited by defamation laws, which I've already talked about that. But in a courtroom, evidence, relevant evidence, is anything that tends to prove or disprove a matter, and it's relevant if it's a matter, issue in the case. If you're having ingredients to show something is chocolate, but the matter of whether it's chocolate or not doesn't matter in the case, then that's not relevant evidence. That's evidence, but it's not relevant. So relevant evidence is anything that tends to prove or disprove a matter at issue in the case. And not all evidence in a court hearing is admissible, even though it may tend to prove or disprove a matter at issue in the case. Sometimes, even though it could prove or disprove something that you want to prove, sometimes it's not admissible because of court rules, rules of commutative evidence, too much evidence to prove something, rules of unfairly prejudicial. Now, it can prove your issue that you want to prove in the case, but it might be unfairly prejudicial. Now, all evidence is prejudicial, but the court might say that even though it's prejudicial, proves your point, that it's unfairly prejudicial, that it might sway the jury too much because it's not fair. For example, you might be able to show 10 pictures of a bloody murder scene, but you can't show 10,000 because the jury might look at all that and say, we're going to convict somebody of this terrible, heinous crime. So it would be unfairly prejudicial to show that many pictures of a crime scene. So although it is relevant evidence, it's unfairly prejudicial. It has to be way unfair. It can't be just close. It's got to be very unfair. And you can't use that in a courtroom. Even though pertinent evidence, you got all those pictures, you can't use it. And there's other rules that keep relevant evidence out of a courtroom to preserve it squared off. And we want it to be fair and impartial. And a judge gets to decide this stuff. And if you don't like it, you can put it up on appeal. But that's the government that decides that kind of stuff. And I don't trust the government. And there's a lot of court hearings that have been very unfair. And they've had evidence that the judge will say is unfairly prejudicial and it should have been in. But the government gets to decide who gets convicted and who don't get convicted based on the rules of evidence. It can decide or it can decide a case, or let somebody be put in jail, or let somebody get out. Now, our evidence teacher in law school pretty much said that you need to be up on rules of evidence. It can win or lose a case. And that's a courtroom. And they won't let me in a courtroom. That's fine. I won't represent people in a courtroom until we get people voted out. And maybe I can get my law license in the future. I kind of doubt it under this corrupt Christian administration. He didn't want somebody like me prosecuting him in a courtroom. So let's do this thing right here. Let's do this outside the courtroom, because politics is not bound by their court rules of evidence. It's bound by the First Amendment and the Constitution and defamation laws. So I've already discussed defamation laws. Defamation law is any unprivileged false communication disseminated to at least a third person that tends to lower them in the standing of someone in the standing of the community. And there's different standards where if you're a private person, you've never put yourself out in the public, never run for public office, you're not a member of the government or anything where people should be able to scrutinize you, then all you have to prove is what somebody said about you was false and that it lowered you in standing in the community and you suffered damages. There are some things so heinous that people say about you, you don't even have to prove damages. And damages are like at a car wreck. If you have your fender bent in, then the other side that ran a traffic light or whatever that dented your fender has to pay for your fender. So that's damages. But if you're a public figure, the standard is malice, knowledge of the falsity of the statement, or reckless disregard for the truth. Now, that's a legal term of art. Malice doesn't mean the same as in everyday language that it does in legal terms. And in order for a public figure to prove that you defamed them, unprivileged, they have to prove that what you said, that you knew that it was false. Knowledge of false statement. If you don't know that it's false, you have some basis for it being true, or the reckless disregard for the truth. That means you could have known that it was not true, and it's overwhelmingly proven fact, unquestionable by any standard that it was not true what you said. Then that's reckless, and you go on and say it anyway. But if there's some foundation for what you say, and it could possibly be true, and you say it, then it's a public figure. Then, and I'm not giving legal advice. I'm telling you my take on what it says in the textbooks, and you can mark it down. The problem with this is Tennessee courts are responsible for adjudicating this stuff, and they're going to rule in the governor's favor and the power's favor. So we're going to have to beat them, not in the civil courts, because they'll beat us every time. Even if we're right, they'll beat us every time because they got crooked judges in Tennessee. And yeah, I said that's not defamation because it's true. Tennessee judges are crooked. They're dirty as hell. You won't get a fair court hearing in a Tennessee courtroom. You'll get a judge that adjudicates in favor of whatever the Christian Governor Bill Lee tells them to do, or they won't get promoted, or they'll get fired and ruined. So we don't need to beat them in courtrooms. You won't beat them. It's rigged. It's stacked against you. The only way we can beat these crooked people is at the voting booth. So let's talk about politics and relevant evidence. So I'm in politics. I'm gonna let me go in the courtroom. So let's talk about politics now. There's another concept called opening the door in legal terms. That means normally in a court hearing, if you're on trial for assault, the prosecution can't bring in people that say that they met you before and you're a very dangerous person. You have a propensity to violence, because that is character evidence. It's not pertinent to the issue of whether or not you assaulted someone in that particular case. The only one of the exemptions to that is you open the door if you bring in someone as a witness for you that says you have a propensity for being peaceful and you'd never hit anybody. You bring your own character witness to say that you couldn't have done this because you couldn't have assaulted that person because you're a very kind person that would never assault anybody. Your character is one of peace. Now, if you bring in that witness for yourself, you have opened the door for the state that they couldn't have originally, but you brought in a witness and they have a right to rebut that witness. They can bring in a witness that says that didn't watch that assault, that says, no, he's got a propensity for violence. He's a mean SOB. And now they wouldn't have been able to bring in the state's witness against you, but you opened the door when you brought in your own character witness. So you best just deal with the issue at hand, because if you don't, then they'll find somebody who'll say something against you. It's called opening the door. It's a legal phenomenon. Now let's talk about politics. So I don't have to follow their crooked court rules, because they'll adjudicate any evidence I have as unfairly prejudicial, even though it's not, because they don't want it in. And that's exactly what they've done. I can explain to you cases. But this is politics. First Amendment, and they even try to stop this. First Amendment, the right to freedom of speech, the right to speak out against the government. You don't have that right in Russia. And you really don't have that right in Tennessee with a Christian governor. You really don't have that right in Knoxville with this administration. They'll try to shut me down. They've already did bad things against me. So in politics, I'm not bound by the rules of court where stuff's unfairly prejudicial. I can be very unfairly prejudicial. And they are very unfairly prejudicial to me. They outright lie, put falsehoods and adjudicate them as true, put the weight of law on lies, and I can prove it. So anything I do that sounds like that I'm being pretty inflammatory and pretty unfairly prejudicial, although it doesn't even matter anyway, because I can be unfairly prejudicial. This is not a courtroom. This is politics. If you don't like the heat, get the hell out of the kitchen. The heat don't bother me. I was out on the road risking my life for public safety, lowering the fatality rate single-handedly. Numbers don't lie. I woke up to my picture being put on the front page of the newspaper, very unfairly prejudicial and lying about me. And so anybody that thinks that I'm a little too forceful in saying stuff that I say about the city government, people in power, not the people in the city, or the state government, you're wrong. And I don't care what you think. It's the mass amount of people that know it needs to be done, and I'm a fighter. I was fighting people getting killed on the roads, trying to keep them from getting killed, and I did that effectively. They just took that battle away, put me into politics. I didn't want to be in the newspaper. They put me into politics and the newspaper in a bad way. So let's use that against them. That's what a fighter does. You use your weapon, let's refurbish it, and we'll go with that. And that's why I'm into politics. I'll be very unfairly prejudicial. For one thing, it's permissible in politics. For another thing, it's not defamation because it's the truth. And another thing, they open the door. They've been crooked, criminal against me. So don't give me none of that. Don't be too mean. That's kind of funny to me. I'll throw the rock as hard as I can throw it. And if that don't hit, I'll pick up another one. So we talked about the never gonna complete James White Parkway. No matter 100 years from now, they'll try to block it. And talked about defamation and the court rules of opening the door and irrelevant evidence. So we'll keep talking, keep fighting. You can run me off your porch, that's fine, I'll leave. We'll go to 10 more. The meaner you are, the more it puts positive enthusiasm in with me. And remember this, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. God loves you, God loves all people, and I do too. And until next time, thank you all very much. Please subscribe and go vote early on August the 6th at Meridian Baptist Church, or wherever they have early voting. Charles, Van, Morgan, and I'll fight for your will. Thank you and goodbye.